Hey, hello there. Welcome to Talking with Tony. We're now on YouTube here for season 14. I'm Tony Jones, your host, and we're welcoming back our college and pro football lead analyst, Danny Arp, who's coming to us from Lagrange, Georgia. Danny, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Anthony. Glad to be back on the show and excited after missing last week. I think I do better when I'm here picking in person.
At this time, I need to acknowledge that you have overtaken me as far as most wins go with the panel, which should happen because you get to pick a lot more games each week than I do. But you've done that, and you need to be commended for that and congratulated for that. And I know our viewers are looking forward to hearing what you have to say today because, Danny, we're coming to crunch time here of the college football season. We've been able to say for the last 2-3 weeks, there's a whole lot more football left to be played. And there is plenty of football. These rivalry games certainly always have some surprises. And I remember a Pittsburgh, West Virginia game coming straight off the top of my head that it cost West Virginia, I guess, a chance at a national championship once. And then there's been some conference championship games where there's been some upsets as well. Ohio State was in line one time and lost to Michigan State. And there's been some other cases going back to the Big 12 and Kansas State one year. But usually form holds, usually. Yeah. And we've got the conference championship games and we've got the rivalry game. I wanted to have you on here today. I wanted to discuss some potential scenarios with that. And we're going to open the show with that, but then we're going to have a little something because Talking with Tony is the best in sports, music, and movies and books. And of course, you've been such a valuable asset talking music. I thought I'd throw something different at you today and get you to discuss potentially the top 5 80s movie soundtracks for us, if you don't mind that. Little Danny Arp's little top 5, we'll count them down. So that'll be the second part of the show. And then the final part of the show, and the reason that most people tune in is to get our picks and all. So I want to begin with by making an announcement to you. Your old friend, Kevin White, is going to be joining us as far as I want to talk. He's we've signed him for part of the Talking with Tony family. He's coming aboard. He's giving his picks today for his first week ever. But he's going to be even appearing here on camera with us as well. So I know you'd probably be excited about linking up with a good former friend like that.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to hear what he has to say. We text back and forth sometimes, and again, his daughter's in Athens, just like Allie, and we haven't had a chance to get together up there in Athens. I think we're both sort of scared what might happen after the way we behaved when we were there the first time. But Kevin didn't let me talk about that. But anyway, I think it's good that he's going to be picking, and it's exciting to hear what he's got to say.
Well, he's a good guy. He's a good fella and a friend to both of us. And I'm excited. He's got good picks. I can look at his picks right now, and I can tell you he's got good picks. When I was talking with him last week, I was telling him it can get extremely frustrating. Like you could be looking good. This is just an example that's pops right in my head. Okay. I'm 4-0-2 given soccer plays this year. So that's no losses in 6 out. But I would be 5-0-1, Danny. But last week, when one of my soccer plays was the under 3 goals in a game, when they went into that so-called extra time, stoppage time, plus 90 minutes, there'd been 1 goal scored. And, I often say they can put whatever they want to up there on that clock, the so-called injury time. We don't know what the referees have. But in that 7 or 8 minutes injury time, there were 2 goals scored, which went from a surefire win. They played more than 90 minutes with 1 goal score, and then they scored 2 goals in that 7-minute period. And I'm saddled with a tie. But, 4-0-2. Same thing in football. You can have a football pick. Maybe somebody was favored by 20 and they're up 24-3 and they've been up that way and they've been in control the second half. And then we see one of those, touchdowns against prevent defense.
Yeah, jump touchdown. Everybody backs way up and just see what happens. Everybody knows the game's over. Everybody with the other team just sitting there thinking, please don't let it happen. But it's going to. We've seen it a million times.
That's exactly right. Danny, first question I have for you when I want to talk about potential possibilities in this college football playoff, is there a so-called lane, a way in for the Big Ten to get 2 teams, with it being Michigan and Ohio State, or is it the loser of that game against Michigan and Ohio State because of Florida State's situation and their argument and potentially Texas's argument that Texas has a victory over Alabama? Do you see that as an elimination game, that Big Ten championship?
I do. And I think that part of it is the general public, number one. I think the committee knows is tired of the two teams from one conference in, right? Because we've had that 2 years back to back. And no, nobody wants to see that again. I mean, I don't want to see it. I mean, of course, I may tell you a different story if something goes bad in Atlanta, which I don't think it will. But I think the loser of the team is out. One, like I said, public exhaustion with the whole Big Ten, SEC getting two in, right? Number two, from the beginning of the season, the Pac has really come on strong this year, right? You said it right away. I think in one of our first shows, you were talking about how strong the Pac was. Great opening weekend. And I think that Oregon and Washington have both made a nice argument for having that possibility. Certainly, if Washington goes undefeated, there's no possible way you put a one-loss, unless it's just total chaos, like you were referencing. I think that was 2005 you were referencing when West Virginia messed up against Pitt. But I don't know, man. I don't see it happening. So I think whoever wins that, and I've told you who I think is going to win, Ohio State, I think will win. And I think that puts Michigan out of it.
I think the country, for once, would really love, I don't know about, I can't say for once, but just with everything that's been surrounding Michigan's program, I think the country would be good with the Ohio State victory over them, assuming they, the other side, because we know what Michigan was doing has far exceeded the rule, and they're lucky to be getting the little, I think, what's a slap on the wrist. I don't really speak out about this on Facebook too much, and obviously I love the Buckeyes, but and I tell you that I think Michigan's got a fabulous football team. That's the other thing. I'm not saying Ohio State would have won any of those last two games, either one of those last two games against Michigan, but you have to wonder. You have that doubt in your head, and they're being punished as far as like what the Big Ten, felt like they need to be punished. I have to ask you also, though. The SEC is, where we live, everybody is like, the SEC is the best conference each and every year. There's an argument to be made there, for sure. Yeah. If Georgia, and I'm stretching here, but just for a fact, if Georgia were to lose to Tennessee this weekend, does the Georgia-Alabama game become an elimination game where there's a path to only get one team no matter what happens outside of the SEC?
Yeah. Again, I feel the same way about it. Tony, if Georgia loses to Tennessee, then it is an elimination game, no doubt about it, because whoever wins that will be the only one team that goes in. I even think, again, if Georgia loses to Alabama in Atlanta, it's a long stretch for them to get in that way, because you can look how the committee felt about them. Yeah, they moved them to number one this week, but they had them at 2, and they've been playing good ball. So if they lose to the one real opponent that the committee values in Alabama, I think that's a problem. And you won't get even if Georgia goes into it undefeated, I think it's still an elimination game, because I don't see the Pac doing too much crazy. Texas with the win over Alabama was big. FSU, LS, and Louisville could be a crazy combination. If Louisville goes on to beat Miami this weekend, they're the representative in the ACC championship, and their defense really matches up well, if you ask me, against FSU's offense. And I think there's a chance there for something crazy to happen. So scenario, Louisville beats FSU, FSU's out. I don't think Louisville gets the bump. They're sitting at number 10. I don't think they can jump. They're certainly not jumping Texas if they go on to win out, right? And then Texas head-to-head against Alabama. I just don't see it. There's no way you get two teams. I don't see two teams from one conference this year getting in. I think it's going to be a nice spread of who's represented. I would like to see it be, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and a Pac team myself. I don't want Texas in there.
Boy, Alabama could have done the world a ton of good by beating Texas to take that argument right out there. And Texas still has to play Iowa State. And Iowa State has come on in the second part of the season after struggling slowly. I mean, they really took it to Brigham Young.
They got Texas Tech too. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen there. I think that was on the road. They got to go play Texas Tech on the road to end it, right?
So I'm with you almost all the way on that, except I think if there's one team that would get in with the losing that conference championship game, I think would be Georgia. And I think they would give the SEC, if, some other things would have to come down on the road. But I think the SEC, I guess is what I'm saying, is the only conference that would get two teams. I feel like there's this Bama has been playing so well. I mean, they really made me look bad last week. I had Kentucky in 10.5 points, and Bama was up 21-0 before I even got comfortable in my seat. Like that.
Well, I told you that was my 5-star last week. I knew you watching it, and you got to admit it, man. You sat and watched it in person with Cam Newton. Mm-hmm. You watched Vince Young. I mean, Milroe is becoming the kind of player that can take over a game with his legs, and he passes just good enough to make him absolutely dangerous, man. So,
yeah,
I'm with you. Maybe it's the Munson in me, Maybe it's Munson in me, but I just feel like it's got to be it's win or nothing for Georgia.
It's so ironic. I've been thinking about all these potential possibilities and all, and what Pac-12 in its last season, what this would mean to them to have a team in it and to get right by it. Spending all this time thinking about college football just doesn't mean what it used to mean to me. When before this name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal, I mean, really, the transfer portal is just so strange. And Stanford didn't do any of it for 2 years under David Shaw, and they've really fallen back now because they're playing catch up with it. No, they didn't do name, image, and likeness either. I mean, Shaw took one player in the transfer portal during his time. So it's strange that I've been thinking about all these scenarios, yet I will say that it's not the same to me as it once was. And it's one of the reasons why I get so much into the Braves and the Yankees during baseball season, like I do with the New York Rangers in hockey season. And I think that's fair. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed, the old school mentality of college football. But, I mean, I don't know. I'm still into it just as much as I ever was. I mean, I feel like there is a place, I think there needs to be a little more control on it. But there is a place to, with what's going around and the money that's out there, there's a place for the players to get compensated for their image and likeness.
Yeah. No, look, I agree with you there, but I just some of the things I don't know what really qualifies as name, image, and likeness and what doesn't when I hear some of the deals. And another element that I just didn't mention that I mentioned on previous shows is when UCLA and Southern Cal joined the Big Ten, that's when things really changed for me because I grew up loving the Rose Bowl every year. Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen broadcasting it, and all the Big Ten champion goes out there to face usually UCLA or Southern Cal. Sure, there were years Oregon was in it. Sure, there were years that another team was in it. Stanford even made some appearances, and some of Washington had some great teams, won a national championship in the 90s. But the fact that the Big Ten used to go out there to play those games against the Pac-10 champion, and now so many of those Pac-10 teams are going to be in the Big Ten. That's where things really started to change for them.
Yeah, that's messed up. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. That is just crazy. The way they're doing the super conferences, that part I don't like. But, it's all about the money, man. So
it is. That's exactly right. All right, so we're going to have a little fun. Since Kevin's new to the show, I'm going to give Kevin's picks first. Then we're going to talk 80 soundtracks, okay? So Kevin White, we're pleased to have him part of the Talking with Tony family and all. He's 0-0 on the season. That gets a fresh start, so to speak. A lot of our players and pickers would like to have that fresh start. He's going with the Michigan Wolverines, -19 at Maryland. Louisville, -1 at Miami, which, if I'm right, that gets them in the ACC championship game, correct, Danny?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. He likes his Georgia Bulldogs -10. He feels like they'll go into Atlanta undefeated to play Georgia Tech, which would clean old-fashioned hate, I believe is what you guys call that. And that Georgia Tech would love a chance to say, like, whoa, what about us? Look here. And they did lead Georgia after one quarter last year in Athens. My Tech friends frequently say that, including our mutual friend Lane Anderson. Southern Cal, he's got -6. A lot of people call this team USC these days. I still call it Southern California -6.5. He's got the Ohio State Buckeyes -27.5. California, the Golden Bears -6.5. That's a rivalry game with the Stanford Cardinal. And he's got Washington getting 2.5 points. Penix, it's a big game for his Heisman opportunities at Oregon State. And closing the college picks with Missouri -11 against Florida. His three professional picks were, and Kevin drew a little bit short end of a straw here because initially this line, when the panel was assigned to select it, was Cleveland Browns -4 against the Steelers. Since we found out that Deshaun Watson has been lost, for the season, but he's got the Cleveland Browns -4. He's got the Minnesota Vikings against the Denver Broncos +2, and he closes his picks with the Kansas City Chiefs -3. We'll run down Stormy's picks, Brian's picks, my picks, and Danny's picks in a little bit, but Danny's got some other pressure on him right now. Let's talk. Danny, Jake has done such a beautiful job, especially when you were talking about that Rolling Stones album that time and the arrows pointing to the hits as you were talking about it and all. So there's a little bit of pressure here. Some different soundtracks came to my mind, and maybe some or all of these have made the top 5, but I started thinking about Top Gun, Dirty Dancing. I started thinking about Footloose as a possibility. The Karate Kid, maybe a long shot, but I know you've got it figured out. You did a little bit more, but you're sort of have become the music analyst here on the show as well. So let's hear it. What does our expert say? Reveal that top 5.
Okay. Well, anybody who's in our age group, and even our kids, friends, anybody riding around in our car, you got 80s on 8, which we all love that. You and I talk about it a lot. But you hear these songs, and I always ride around with Janet, and it drives her crazy because I'm like, what movie was that in? She's like, why do you say that every time? I was like, I know this was in a movie. Because the 80s you didn't make a movie without some kind of fabulous soundtrack, right?
Right.
Usually involving Kenny Loggins, in some way. So a couple of ones that didn't make my list, I got those right here. So the couple that did not make my list were, and they were more like just one hit things, soundtracks. Like, so Say Anything, right? Big, great movie. Had the one big Peter Gabriel hit. That one. Yeah,
In Your Eyes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, In Your Eyes. That was it. That was a didn't quite make it. You got Beverly Hills Cop, fantastic soundtrack. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know when the last time you saw that movie was, but it's a great movie, number one. And two, the soundtrack was really good. Rocky 3. Fantastic soundtrack. Okay.
Is that Survivor on that one? Like the
Rocky? Yeah. You had Survivor. You had all the workout scenes when he's getting ready to he gets his butt kicked the first time and he always wins the second one. But anyway, that was a good one.
Let me ask you this, Dan. Would Axel F be one of the top instrumental ones from the 80s soundtracks? It wasn't enough to get it in the top 5. There's a good Patti LaBelle song on that soundtrack as well, leading off. But Axel F, pretty good tune.
Look, Axel F's fantastic. I mean, that's why it almost makes the top 5 list, because of Axel F. I mean, anytime you hear that, you got to listen to it all the way through. And you would think, music instrumental, you're going to turn it at some point, but you're not going to. It's like the Miami Vice soundtrack. That's a TV show, obviously, but Same type deal, right? But let's move into the top 5. And you being an 80s expert, as you are, you nailed a few of them. So number 5 on my list is Dirty Dancing, right? Mm-hmm. Dirty Dancing comes in number 5. Jan and I went to see that at the movies together. It was a great date movie. You had hits like In Your Eyes, not In Your Eyes, and
Hungry Eyes.
Hungry Eyes, yeah, which is one of your favorites, right? Yes. I had the time of my life. It had a lot of good old songs playing on it as well. My
friend Bill Medley, by the way, with that, I've had the time of my life. I know you don't know if you know that he and I have met up a couple of times, and the guy that plays with him now is an Auburn grad who took the part of the brothers who passed away. So he's always said, come out to Vegas. They've got this long-time contract out in Vegas and all. So that's a good one. I was hoping they do better than top 5, but I didn't. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's fine. I mean, I get it. It's a great soundtrack. It's number 5. Mm-hmm. Number 4, Top Gun.
Ooh.
The original Top Gun. Yeah, Top Gun, man. Number 4. Still great, though, right? I mean, that's top 5 out of all the 80s soundtracks. It's pretty good, bro.
Danger Zone, Playing with the Boys.
Look, you got Danger Zone. You got Heaven in Your Eyes by Loverboy. Don't forget about that.
That's a really good song.
The Top Gun anthem, which just dominated when the new Top Gun came out. Dun, 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 you can't beat that. Tom Cruise.
The song that they're playing during the makeout scene too.
Oh yeah. Berlin. You take my breath away. That one.
Yeah.
Great date song right there. So that was number 4. Number 3. John Hughes film, Pretty in Pink.
Oh, Breakfast Club.
Club. Not Breakfast Club. Pretty in Pink. The actual movie, Pretty in Pink. Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club was another good soundtrack, but Pretty in Pink had "If You Leave."
I love that.
You had that one.
Don't leave.
Yeah, you had that one. You got Left of Center by Suzanne Vega. That was one of her first big hits that came out. You didn't even know that was on there, right? Left of Center.
I didn't.
That didn't do it for you?
No, but I'd have it. But this is your thing. I mean, you're the expert.
Yeah. Go ride around, put on the Pretty in Pink soundtrack. You'll see what I'm talking about. Left of Center, Suzanne Vega. Do What You Do by NXS. I know you're a big NXS fan, right? That's a great one.
Yeah.
And then obviously the title named, Pretty in Pink by the Psychedelic Furs. So
the metal stand is not easy in this countdown. I still hadn't heard what would be my number one, Footloose, but what you got.
Number 2.
Don't say it.
Footloose is my number 2 soundtrack, best soundtrack of the 80s.
Holding out for a hero, Footloose. Let's hear it for the boy, Denise Williams, the Bonnie Tyler.
No, I got it right here. Listen, Footloose.
Almost Paradise.
Yeah, Footloose. Let's hear it for the boys. Almost Paradise. Holding out for a hero. Dancing in the Sheets by Shalimar. And I always thought it was Dancing in the Streets till we grew up a little bit and got what he was talking about.
Then you understand. Yeah.
Somebody's Eyes. You had I'm Free by Kenny Loggins.
Oh, I'm Free. Yeah, with Mr. Soundtrack himself, Kenny Loggins. Yes.
Yeah. So you had all those, but still with that comes in number 2.
Okay. All right.
So
that's number 2. Then
what could be number 1? Yeah. What could be number 1, right?
Yeah.
Come on, bro. 1984. Purple Rain, man.
Yeah. I mean, most
the
people
whole album from start to finish. It's a movie.
I don't know about the whole album. I'm going to give you like 7 songs on there. Not the whole album.
Any album that starts off with Prince talking, his dearly beloved, we're having today. Come on, man. That is the number 1 soundtrack. And again, that's sort of cheating because...
Yeah, I want to push another floor right here myself. But
it's sort of cheating because the movie is... about music, but I mean, either way, you got Let's Go Crazy, Take Me With You, The Beautiful One. Computer Blue, Darling Nikki, old nasty song, When Doves Cry, I'll Die For You, Baby I'm a Star, and it ends it with Purple Rain. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to you as far as, but that's one artist though, and
that's true.
With Footloose, you get multiple artists.
I guess that's a great point. If you go level of, I guess, what would you call it? Level of difficulty or, having a lot of different artists on there. Yeah, you'd have to give Footloose the nod on that. But I'm still going with Purple Rain, man. And when I went to the college, all these people now got movies on their phones and everything else. When I went to college, I drove away from my house with a old, you still turn the channel by hand. And I had a VCR, and the only movies I had to watch in college dorm was Up the Creek. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I remember that.
It was terrible. I had Up the Creek and Purple Rain, man. And I watched Purple Rain like 20 times in Russell Dormitory. I'll tell you that. So
I stay with you.
That's my top. That's my top 5 for movie soundtracks, man.
All right. And most people would agree with you. Most people would have Purple Rain ahead of Footloose. If they didn't before Prince's death, they certainly would now. And look, I have no problem with that. I think they're both outstanding. Argument, as we should say, could be made for both, but I think most people would agree with you. They'd vote number 1 with you. And he was some kind of performer. I was at another 80s band. I was at a Duran Duran concert with Tara and our friend Brett Detmering. And Duran Duran actually asked for everybody there in the crowd to pray for him that Prince was not doing well. And a couple of days later, he had passed away. And even though we had heard that he wasn't doing well from the Duran Duran guys, I was still just absolutely shocked, just absolutely stunned. He just seemed like, it's kind of a Pat Benatar song, but he just seemed like one of those invincible guys.
Yeah, he's an awesome performer. I was really into his music before that. I mean, he came out, before with 1999, and then he had, what was the name of that other one? Anyway, that was.
I love that 2000 party over time. I remember being in Myrtle Beach, and we got to get to the football picks, but one of those deals that it's like a pavilion that had a bunch of different rides and all, a little miniature amusement park, but it had a lot of rides. And this one thing spin and spin and spin. And nobody wanted to ride it because it looked really dangerous. And I remember they kept playing Raspberry Beret over and over. It was like a top 40 hit at that time, and they just kept hitting. So after the first time, the guy said, "Do you want to stay on?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it again." And then after that second time, he's like, "You want to stay on?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." I was feeling like my head started, feeling a little bit lame. Didn't toss my cookies or anything like that. But after the third one, I said, "Hey, we'll get off of this." He goes, "Yeah, no problem." And I remember taking a couple of steps and feeling very woozy. Whoa, because I've been spinning there for three whole rotations. All right, let's run down Stormy's picks. Stormy got he's 25-34. He's 9 games under 500. So we need Stormy to have an excellent week. He probably will. He's got Maryland plus 19 in that opening game against Michigan. Louisville -1. He takes the Georgia Bulldogs -10. I believe it's the first time he's taken Georgia this season. He goes with Clemson -6.5. Southern California goes with the Trojans -6.5. He likes the Buckeyes of Ohio State -27.5. His got Stanford Cardinal in that big rivalry +6.5. That'd make Miles Fuller very happy. The fictional book that I'm writing called 6 Weeks this Summer, featuring former Stanford baseball player Miles Fuller. Oregon State, he goes with -2.5. The Florida Gators +11 in his NFL picks. Pittsburgh Steelers catching those 4 points. The Denver Broncos favored by, Denver? Yeah, favored by 2. And the Philadelphia Eagles +3 against the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think Taylor Swift's going to be able to be there because she's on tour out of the country. Brian Lundquist is 30-40 against the spread this year. He's got a reduced schedule. He goes with North Carolina +6.5. Tennessee +10 against the Bulldogs. He's got California -6.5. His 2 NFLs are the Pittsburgh Steelers +4 and the Kansas City Chiefs -3. His 5 stars, California -6.5. Of course, he lives really close to Berkeley. And Stormy decided to go out on his own and take a 5-star that wasn't part of the package here. Didn't know you could do that. Stormy making up his own rules. Stormy goes Penn State -20.5 as his 5-star. And I don't have a 5-star from Kevin. We'll say it's the Georgia Bulldogs, though. He's usually pretty confident in his Bulldogs. He's usually pretty honest as well. I'll give you my picks before we get over to Danny. I am 41-27 against the spread this year, and some of that's because the mascots that I like have done very well, and some of it's because it's been some good picking. I was 4-2 last week. I'll certainly take that. I've got 5 picks this week. I've got the California Golden Bears -6.5 against that Stanford Cardinal team. I'm going with Maryland +19, and Jake's assignment will be to find that good-looking turtle. The way I feel like is I'm going against Ohio State and Michigan this week in hopes that they are somehow both looking ahead to each other. So the Minnesota Golden Gophers would be the next selection at +27.5. Jake's got to find the Golden Gopher, and he's got to find that Terrapin for me. I'm on the Tennessee Vols +10, and the reason I'm on them is I feel like this line should be 14 or 15, and that bothers me that it's been sticking around 9.5 from 10 all week long, which tells me there's a lot of professional money coming in on the Vols as well. I would have that line higher. So I think Tennessee is the play there because I often talk about traps, and I fell in one a couple of weeks ago when I took Notre Dame -3 against Clemson. And then I've got one NFL play, and that's just because I'm such a C.J. Stroud fan, the Houston Texans -5. And I'm just going to let Danny choose the 3 NFL ones that the other members of the panel are choosing. Danny is 46-38. He's done extremely well after a little bit of a sluggish start. And Danny, we've got about 5 minutes remaining, so let's get through these picks. Let's open your selections up. Michigan, a 19-point road favorite at Maryland.
Okay. I don't think Michigan's going to be looking ahead at all. They've been looking. They really have only had, besides the Penn State game, 1 game all year that they got to focus on, and it's Ohio State. I don't think they're looking ahead. I'm going to go Michigan -19 with this.
And let me follow up with what's been surrounding them. Do you think it's actually helped them remain focused and they're just taking it out on opponents each and every Saturday?
Yeah. I thought if they were going to do a little slip or a dip or anything like that. Now, I thought the dramatic crying speech by the coach was ridiculous. But, if they were going to slip, it would have been last week. And I don't see any problem with Maryland on that one.
And they didn't slip. Louisville is favored by 1 at Miami. Look, things have happened back, especially in the old Orange Bowl, and Miami would play. They don't seem to have that same kind of magic at the Hard Rock Stadium. Louisville needs a victory really badly here.
Yeah, I think the lines is scary, right? Because if you look at it to me, I would think it's one of those like you were talking about. I would have thought Louisville maybe -5.5, 6, maybe even, the way the game's been played out. But I still got to say that Braum is better than Cristobal, and I think he's going to make some other big error like he's done already once this year. And I think I'm going to stick with Louisville, my preseason ACT camp pick, -1.
I like that because you did go out before the season started and said, hey, I'm looking at the Louisville Cardinals. I'm looking at Louisville Cardinals. He cited earlier. He thinks that Florida State's got some problems, some matchup problems there against Louisville. Georgia favored by 10 in Knoxville.
Yep. Again, same thing. We're getting to the point of the season where the cream rises to the top. I think Tennessee at home is going to be tough, but I'd still say Georgia -10, and Georgia covers.
Does the cream rise to the top in Clemson, too, where they have seemed to find their groove, 6.5-point favorites against North Carolina?
Look, one thing you got to say about Dabo, it might have taken him a little while, but once he latches on to something and gets a little success going, he has a way to spin it, and he has a way to keep it going. It's 2-0 in the last 2 games. Make it 3. Clemson -6.5.
I can see that. I'm pulling for the Tar Heels, but I can see that. I'll be pulling for UCLA against Southern California, too. Now, we know USC is going to score points. This line's been hanging around that same number, around 6.5, Danny.
Yep. Both teams lost 2 in a row, so just the opposite. For no other reason besides the mascot upset me last time when I picked it. I'm going with USC -6.5. But this one's a toss-up to me. I don't know. It could go either way.
Got about 2 minutes, as Chris Fowler says. Let's get through these in a hurry. Ohio State actually now says that. Ohio State by 27.5 at home against Minnesota.
That's too many points, man. Minnesota plus 27.5.
Okay. Cal in that rivalry game, they call it the game at Stanford, the big game, California by 6.5.
I'm going with the transitive approach and how they both did against Oregon, and I'm going to take Stanford, and I'm taking the 6.5 points.
Okay. Washington is at Oregon State with a game that could have some potential college football playoff implications for Washington.
It's also got some Pac-10 championship implications for Oregon State, right? So I like it. I'm going Oregon State -2.5.
Okay. And finally, the Gators at Missouri. You, like me, have been a believer in Missouri all year long. They're favored by 11 here.
Yeah, I'll ride it out. I'm going by Missouri -11. I don't see Florida. Yeah, I don't see Florida getting it together. So.
Okay. I'm assuming you're on the Pittsburgh Steelers +4 against the Browns.
You know I am. Steelers are the one. Like you said, the whole scenario, and then 2, the Steelers just find a way to win.
Okay, and what about the Vikings-Broncos?
Broncos -2.
And the Eagles and the Chiefs?
I'm going the Chiefs -3. Chiefs coming off a bye week. I like it.
Okay. Okay, I like it. Danny, we got to wrap it up because we're out of time, but I really appreciate you stepping in tonight for us.
Oh, yeah, I had a great time, and again, great weekend of football coming up. Let's have a fun time.
It is. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. For Jake Barton, Danny Arp, I'm Tony Jones. We'll see you next time on Talking with Tony.